Open board meeting of Tuesday, April the 4th, 2017 to order. Just so trustees are aware, trustee Fruit is not attending today due to some issues with her family, and trustee Croft is not well, so we are here. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. And before we start any further into the agenda, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the sudden passing of one of our own in the school district, Tom Clark. Tom started with the district in 1994 as a bus driver and quickly became a part of the Bus Garage family. After many years and several different jobs in the school district, Tom became transportation supervisor last June 2016. He was respected and loved by all, the transportation department to the members of the Board of Education. He'll be remembered for his hard work, his engaging smile, and his sense of humor. We'll all miss him. Our condolences go to his family, his friends, and his colleagues in the district. So moving to the adoption of the agenda, there are a couple of items to add. First on 8.2e, 2017-18 annual facilities grant. And under 12, new business, 12.1 day of mourning. With that, I'd ask if there's a mover. Moved by trustee Thorne, seconded by trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the minutes of just March the 7th, 2017 board meeting. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegations, and we are very pleased tonight to have with us Rotary Starfish Pack Project, and I'll ask Corrine Thompson and Mike Hansen to come forward, and I'm not sure if Casey Johnson is also joining us.
Oh, the screen. Yeah, you're really taking off the screen. So, thank you so much for having us. I'm Corrine Thompson. This is Mike Hansen and Casey Johnson, and we are on the board that started Starfish Cowichan Valley. Hopefully, you've all had heard a little bit about it, and we've had a number of meetings with the board and delegates and Rod. So we're really pleased to be here today to announce to you that we are starting with our pilot school, which is Coheman. And we're going to be, this Thursday, we're going to be packing the packs, and they will go out to Coheman to be distributed on Friday morning to 31 children. So we're just so thrilled to be able to move this forward. We've done a lot of work with fundraising, and this was a project, I just want to reference this site here. So this is Cowichan Valley's site it's called starfishpack.com. With a program that was started in Abbotsford when some teachers were identifying hungry kids in the classroom. And it went in front of Rotary, and they brought together this Starfish project, just aimed at feeding the kids that are in need, that are hungry. So we will be, on Thursday, we will be the 17th community in BC that is bringing this to their school district. Through yourselves, they were able to identify about 180 kids, and we're gonna start one school at a time. You know that how to eat an elephant thing. So although Rotary is starting this, it's designed to be a community program, and it's not a Rotary program per se. So it's Starfish Cowichan Valley, and right now we have on board Solitary Press has been helping us, Social Media Simple, Millbay Towing, the there's four Rotary clubs. The Rotary Club, there's two Rotary clubs in Duncan, the Monday Club and the Friday Club, Friday Morning Club, the South Cowichan Club, and the Chemainus Club. And
there's a radio station.
The radio station, absolutely. Casey from Juice FM has been really helpful. We've reached out to Cowichan Green Community. We're currently talking with Nourish Cowichan, so we're trying to bring all the players in and see how we can work together because we've really got the same goal here. And our overall goal would be to feed all 180 of those children. And we're sort of thinking there's probably a few more than that. And then other ways of how can we modify the program, what else is needed. So when we were having conversations with Nourish, finding about other things that are needed, right? And in talking to Fatima, she's looking at the, the need for a commercial kitchen, which could probably help our program as well as for a place to pack. So the total cost per child is $525, and that is all the weekends in the school year for them to take home a bag of food. And they are modified a little bit for long weekends. One of the first questions you had, well, what about the summertime? What about spring break? So we'll try and target those as we can, but right now this is how we're going to start off. And of course, any and all donations are welcome. We are still working to find a tax receivable or a partner that can provide tax receipts to individual donors, because most businesses can write it off as advertising or promotion. So, yeah.
So it's a weekend program, just because Kareem is thrilled and excited,
I know,
as we all are.
excited.
So real quickly, this is about weekend food, right, for kids identified through the principals and the teachers in the schools. So that's how we're responding. Rotary's sort of expertise is fundraising and banging the drum. So we're reaching out to Kinsman and Lake Cowichan and other community service clubs to begin to build a network. So it's a long-term project. We understand it's a long-term project. It's $100,000 a year to do 180 children in the Cowichan Valley. So we recognize that we're going to be fundraising for a while. We also want to design a model that will sustain it. Those are our objectives. We actually have no idea how we're going to accomplish those pieces, but that's the challenge we've taken on. And we want to thank Candace and Rod for their help and their support in identifying who we've got to talk to, the principals that we've met. It's important for network building and taking care of community. So that's what we're doing. And so thanks, and we'll be back. And we hope to report lots of good things. To be fair, we're going to succeed and we're going to fail, but we're not going to stop. Okay. So that's us.
So there's contact information on the brochure, so later if you've got any questions or anything, call me, email me.
You're not going to wait for later. My hands are already on here.
Anyway.
So, are you okay? Trustee Hutchins?
Yeah, well, thank you for the leadership on this, much needed. I just don't quite understand the logistics of how do you get the bags out once a week and bags back in? Is it a backpack? Is it a...
We'll let you know in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But we'll have learned all the bumps. We're starting this week, and so we don't know the answers to those questions. We're just anticipating that we're going to run into bumps and bruises, and we'll figure that out. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to speak to that with some knowledge. Right now, it's nebulous. We just don't know. But we're
Exactly.
This is a Cowichan courageous crew, that's for sure. Yeah. Trustee Schmidt.
So is it just cash donations, or do you accept food? Like, what does
It
that
is.
look like?
Cash, it is cash donations. We are purchasing the food through Save On Foods at cost. And the food packages or what's in each week's bag is predetermined. There's a menu already. There's like 5 different menus, 4 weeks, and then one is a long weekend. So that's predetermined. A lot of, most of it is non-perishable with some food thrown in. So, but yes, all cash donations because we will be purchasing the food. Good question.
And just to speak to the piece, Save-On has stepped up in the province as a supporter of this program, as the Starfish program. So in any community that stepped forward, Save-On has supported as a provider, so as a food provider at cost. So we didn't mention them earlier, but kudos to Save-On for stepping up for community. So.
They're doing it in all the other communities.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from trustees? Trustee Thorne?
I'd like to thank you for what you're doing. It's touching to hear that you think of the children, our future. No child should go to school and leave hungry. But to go one step further, say, take this home and feed your family. That's a medicine that's priceless to me. And I hope that we continue to work with your organization. Because to me, this is, for the time I've sat at this board, this is the best thing I've seen since, and we've seen a lot of great things in this community with this board. But when you reach out and start holding children where you are now, deserves the utmost praise from people like you who say, wow.
Thank you so much for your wonderful comments. We're just thrilled to be able to make a difference today for somebody that we know is gonna make such a huge difference in the future. And I'm trying not to call my time on Thursday. Yeah, probably not gonna happen.
Just a final thanks. I mean, we really appreciate what you're doing, and we thank you for coming to let us know what's going to start this week. That's very exciting. So, thank you, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you want us to leave now?
You're welcome to
You
stay.
wanna You really wanted to do this?
Thanks, folks.
Thank
very much.
you. Okay, moving to item 5, report of closed meeting, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. At the closed portion of the meeting today, the board discussed personnel and facilities issues.
Thank you. Moving to superintendent of schools, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no personnel items, but
Sorry, action list? Oh, we'll come back to it.
Save that.
I'll save it, or you can carry on. What would you like? Okay, and can you just
can I
hang
carry
for a
on?
second?
Okay, I'll hang on for a second.
Okay, good. Let's go back and do it in order. Action list. Okay. Trustee Schmidt.
Sorry, I did have a question.
Oh,
I
that's
forgot.
why you got it. Okay.
Through the chair to Mr. Sandquist, the foundation piece, haven't we already kind of settled out on that, or?
There was a request for a report back to the board on establishing what's required to establish a foundation that still needs to be prepared and presented.
Any other comments on any piece of the planning here, Mr. Sanchez?
The budget survey is currently out. It will close on April the 9th, Sunday evening, and there are some questions around transportation that form part of this review that's on the action list.
Thank you. Trustee Hutchins?
Same question. How do people know how to respond to the survey?
It's been advertised through the schools, the newsletters, it's been on our website. Not sure if we advertise in the paper, but we've taken as sort of as broad as we could through our own organization.
Thank you.
Anything further on the action list? All right. Mr. Superintendent, my apologies. Back to you.
Several things to talk about this month, Madam Chair. To begin with, to announce another grant that has come our direction. This is the Youth Trade Capital Equipment program, lovingly known as the YTCEP, and it comes through the Ministry of Jobs, Tourism, Skills and Training and the Ministry of Education, along with the ITA, and the purpose of this grant is to give districts some money to put into refreshing, renewing shop equipment. We've heard in the past about curtains on welding booths and those kinds of things for our district. And our submission was accepted for $205,998, which is great. $92,000 of which has to be spent by the end of March.
That's
It's okay, we
coming
will have no problem with that. So what our plan entails, we submitted a plan for significantly more, of course, than this amount. And we're funded up to this, and so now we're in the process of going through our and they gave us a fair amount of leeway in determining which pieces we wanted to pull out. So we're in the process of doing that. It will refresh shop equipment, especially for things that in smaller schools that they just don't have the capital resources to pay for. So that's great. We are also a bit unique in the province, I believe, in putting forward the idea of the purpose of this money is to ultimately encourage more kids to go into the trades and get into hands-on kinds of experiences. And we know that to do that you need to start earlier, so we will also be using it to help with maker carts in elementary schools for kids to get their hands on those kinds of experiences. Some things we're calling tinker carts, which are a bit more tradesy feeling than it's hammers and boards and drill presses and so on at elementary and secondary levels. So that again, this is for all kids to have experience with, not just kids that necessarily select into the shop areas, but so more kids have access to these kinds of things. And where that happens in earlier grades, we hope that encourages them to move on. So it's a 3-year plan, starting with $92,000 this year and 63 and then 50 in the next couple of years. So that's great news.
That's a celebration.
It's pretty cool.
That's
It's pretty cool, and the ability for us to be really flexible and creative in how we do it. It wasn't just you have to buy this or that. It's give us your ideas, give us your thoughts on how you could ultimately try to increase the opportunities for kids in those hands-on areas.
Madam Chair, in that process of exactly a grant, is that a check and then we spend it, or do we have to spend it and then get a check?
It's just a check. This time of year, often checks arrive and need to clear someone else's account.
It's in the bank.
It's in the bank. Wow. It is in the bank.
Can I just pursue, is this something that will go out to the community from that organization? Or, I mean, that's a pretty significant thing to tell our community, that we've received that kind of money and able to do the kinds of things that you talked about, even that tinker part. I mean, we've never had the ability to provide that kind of education. Is there?
So our anticipation would be once we have had a chance, this is just sort of hot off the press,
Yeah.
to identify those things off the list that we're going to be funding, to put out a press release through here to be able to talk about those things and more specifically about what's going to happen.
Great, thank you. Trustee Schmidt?
And I know this wasn't a for sure thing, but this was one of the wish list items from DSAC. And I know it wasn't a done deal and you guys didn't know if we really had it or not, but that was one of the things the trades kids were saying, we really need an upgrade on our equipment. So I'm really excited to hear that it did come through.
So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Back to you for more good news, please.
I have lots of it. At Coheman, you've just heard about the Starfish backpack program starting there, which is awesome. It's just exquisite. And again, points to Rotary Club for taking the leap. They just said, we're going to do this. Not quite sure how. Set a date and met the targets, and backpacks went home. So that's pretty amazing. Also at Coheman, we have a picture somewhere on there of the what we're calling the Coheman Innovative Design Center. For those of you playing the home game, that spells KID. KID Center, which is repurposing the old computer lab into a hands-on exploration area where it helps kids develop critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, problem solving. Very hands-on. It features a great Lego wall. That's right, we don't have pictures of this one yet. Sorry, we don't. They're just Monroe's crew is in there as we speak. A vertical Lego wall on one side where kids can build and design and explore a green screen for video production
Nice.
with those Lego kinds of movies, amongst other things. And tables and areas to use the space in a pretty flexible way for those hands-on maker, tinkerer kinds of opportunities for kids, and that's under the direction of Amy Uzel, who's just really has the bit between her teeth and is doing just a remarkable job there. It's sort of the first of the kind for us in an elementary school. Pretty amazing opportunity. The community has been great in providing Lego and those kinds of things. So it's not quite ready to open yet, but any day I think it's if not this week, maybe next. It's pretty neat. Great opportunity. Well worth a visit when we once it opens in the next few days.
Will we have an official opening? I'm just thinking that would be something.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Celebrate again.
It's a great opportunity for kids to learn things about themselves and learn things about how they learn, and to build confidence in themselves as learners, and that we know from the research transfers over into other areas. Once kids learn that they are good at these things and they have these skills, and they're good designers and critical thinkers in ways that often in classrooms that might be more paper-based we don't see. This is a chance for them to learn that about themselves and then transfer that over. So, pretty cool. District French Immersion Carnival was held earlier this month at the Forest Discovery Center. Brings together students, parents, teachers from all our French immersion schools. Great opportunity for all, and lots of the activities are led by grade 12 French immersion students for the young kids. So, it was highly successful. Try-A-Trade is up and running. Has just started this year, and I think this is one of the earlier groups to go through it. It happens for all grade 7 students in the district to go to Cow High, and it allows grade 7 students the opportunity to work in sort of a 21st century construction-ish fashion, whatever constructionist means, and explore various trades. So they get to try things out. They get to try out carpentry, plumbing, electrical, drywall, painting. They actually construct a little bathroom and plumb it and run the electrical in it and frame it and so on. And for many of these kids, it's the first time they've swung a hammer or used a screwdriver, and that's, so many of our kids used to build tree forts and all those things in backyards, and that doesn't happen as much. So this is just a great opportunity for kids, and we know anecdotally as we sort of talk to these kids as they move through, often this lights a little bit fire under them, and then they head down those roads in subsequent grades. So it's a great opportunity for all of our grade 7s.
Can I just ask how long they have to try the trade?
Each session,
2 days, sorry.
2 days.
And this is so all of our grade 7s rotate through, so 2 days, and then they take 1 day to re-prep, and then the next class comes in for 2 days. And this is the 3rd year now that we've been doing this with all of our grade 7s, and some 6s if it's a 6-7 split.
School is much more exciting than when I was in school.
Or when you were teaching.
Yeah, that's true.
Related dual credit and trades programs. Again, we're seeing an increase this year in numbers of students. We don't have those firm numbers yet from the February count. We expect them to be strong. So to date, so far, we have 382 students engaged in dual credit and trades programs, compared to 360 at this time last year. So we're expecting that number to increase pretty significantly when we see our February count.
There is a question maybe.
Oh, sorry.
Trustee Hutchins?
I'm just curious about the grade 7 program. Who provides the busing for Discovery to do that? Does it have to come out of their program, or is it a district initiative?
District pays for it.
Nice.
Cheryl personally, I'm not sure what that is. I think it means the district.
It's about 2,400 to 2,800 for the year or for a second semester to bus all of the grade 7 students in and out, so it's cheap.
Those are great decisions made by the board.
On behalf of the board.
Doing well. All right, back to you.
Dual credit trades. Currently our trades, the careers list includes admin assistant, animal care aide, auto service tech, carpentry, electrician, hairdressing, healthcare assistant, heavy duty mechanic, heavy duty mechanical trade, et cetera, et cetera. It's a long list of the kinds of things that our students are taking in terms of have the opportunity to take in terms of dual credit with either VIU or Camosun. And those, again, our students availing themselves of those opportunities is just mushrooming, and it's a great opportunity for them to come out of grade 12 with something that is partway down a certification road, or sometimes just to explore. Well, I think I might want to try that. Well, that didn't work out, but now I think maybe it's welding for me, and try something else. And so it's just a phenomenal opportunity, and great partnerships.
Fabulous. And I'm seeing another news release. I mean, this is another celebration. I remember when we started dual credit and trades. How many were there? I think it was like less than 100 anyway when we first started. Not a long time ago.
This is a bit of an example of build it and they will come. This is part of what the decisions that were made during the Coquille Trade Center and the leap of faith. We all kind of took with VIU to go, well, this will be good. We know there's interest. We know this is the right thing, and build it and they will come. And so we're already almost out of space at Coquille, like it is. And again, not all of them are trades. Some of those things are criminology, English, first year English, psychology, a variety of courses, sort of on the academic side as well. So it's just great opportunities. We have a Maker Way training day set for April the 26th that the district is hosting in the gym at Seawall. We have over 60 participants signed up for that day. That makes up for the one that got snowed out, one of our famous snow days this year. And we have folks coming from surrounding districts, experts coming in from UBCO, coming in to help manage and run the day. And so it's an opportunity for 60 people, most of whom are our folks, to get trained. And
So this is teachers.
What's it called?
Maker Way Training Day.
It's sponsored by the ITA.
It's sponsored through the ITA funding. Is funding it. Anything else, Cheryl or Deb, you want to say on that?
What are they learning?
Design thinking.
Yeah, so they go through a design thinking day. It's our principals and vice principals and senior staff. We all went through it in the summer with the same trainers from UBCO. Susan Creighton, Dr. Susan Creighton out of UBCO, sort of a Canadian expert on this, came in and spent a day and a half with all of us in the summer. And now it's just sort of mushrooming out, and so now it's an opportunity for a whole pile of teachers to be exposed to this and to be trained in this. So it's for more people to do the kinds of things that I was talking about at Coheman, and you don't necessarily need a special room for it. It's really a way of thinking and a way of approaching problem solving and a way of using design thinking sort of in everyday life, which isn't just an event that you would go to in a classroom for an hour a week. It's really just a way of thinking and being. But you often do it in very hands-on kinds of activities where you're working communally to do things.
So are they starting at ground zero, like somebody who hasn't got any background could come
Yes.
in and understand?
Almost anybody could.
Almost anybody. I'm keeping some interest. Okay, thank you.
Climbing program. Just to let you know, one of our alumni, Canny Whitmore, a student from the Cowichan program, is our first student to complete the climbing gym instructor's course offered through Thompson Rivers University. She's a grade 12 student at Cowichan Secondary. Has been climbing in the program since grade 8, and now she can be an instructor in any climbing gym in the country. So kind of the first alumni, although she's still in grade 12, to come up with that level of certification, this nationally recognized certification. So that's turning climbing a passion into a career, into something like this. Pretty nifty. We have 22 principals coming from Queensland, Australia on the 6th, so that's Thursday this week, coming to visit the district. They are all elementary principals, and we'll be visiting 3 of our schools and spending some time in some classrooms, then meeting with senior staff for a conversation about transformation and new curriculum and so on, both from a district and a provincial perspective. Joining them are 2 researchers from an organization called Learning First, not Learning Forward, but Learning First, which is an Australian-led international organization that is really taking a lead on educational research. And Ben Jensen is the head of that organization. And Ben prepared a report about 1.5 years ago on the state of professional learning in British Columbia. Quite an excellent piece. And now his team has been commissioned coincidentally by the state of Queensland. So Queensland's principals and this group coming on behalf of the Queensland state government to investigate what's going on in British Columbia and to prepare a report on transformation and cultural change. And so those 2 researchers will be joining us on that day as well. To let you
say that's another really huge item for this district. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
It's pretty cool. We need tour guides. We need to take this on, but it's neat, and it gives our teachers an opportunity to sort of show their stuff because they're in classrooms and feel really good about what they're doing, because the world is, as we predicted, the world is coming to see what's going on, not just in Cowichan, but around the province, and we just happen to be beneficiary of some of those kinds of visits. And they ask really, really, really hard questions. We have a team next door right now trying to answer. We have about 3 or 4 pages from Ben Jensen's team. It's bewildering. We have naloxone training, our second round of naloxone training, coming up on April 24th at 3:30 in next door in the Inspiration Room. They can manage a maximum of 24 participants. If trustees are interested, if they let Tracy know, I believe Trustee Croft expressed interest in doing that. And it's predominantly for, we had a large number of folks that couldn't do the training last time, so we've asked for a second opportunity, so that is coming on April 24th. And just a reminder that that training is not necessary for students, but because of the communities around some of our schools, it's really, that's the focus. It's not, and public health has been really clear on this, it's not because we have issues in our schools with students with injection drugs, but it could be in the parking lot after school where a community member is, or in the evening or whatever, so it's second round training for that. Had the opportunity, I'm almost done, to at spring break to go to Jakarta, Indonesia for a week on behalf of the World Bank and participate in some conversations there and represent Canada and in Cowichan. There in some conversations, they were Cowichan, that's a funny way to spell Canada, so no. And the focus there was they wanted the 3 top performing jurisdictions in the world to present sort of our stories to the other Asian who were very strong on PISA and OECD, those kinds of measures. So there was, in that group, there was myself, a fellow from Estonia and Singapore, 3 top performing jurisdictions, British Columbia, Estonia, and Singapore. Really interesting to see from Indonesia's perspective and from the Asian community's perspective how they think of us. The stories that they tell of us about us in British Columbia are, it's different than stories we tell ourselves, and the stories that we tell that others within the province tell about ourselves. And you get to meet some cool people, so I became friendly with the head of UNESCO, who I sat beside for a couple of days, and have some of their publications, which are really kind of interesting. When you think about Thailand and Bangkok and some of Vietnam, some of those jurisdictions. So a couple of publications just for some show and tell. You're welcome to borrow them and read them if you like. Assessment of transversal competencies, which is a fancy way of saying what we in BC are calling our competencies, those things that are transversal that go across curriculum areas, and we call them our core competencies. The rest of the world calls them transversal competencies. Interesting how they're viewing the same things very similarly and yet somewhat differently. A huge focus on mental health, again, not different than here, and a focus on happiness. How happy are kids in school? So interestingly enough, in the 2015 PISA study, they looked into this. Indonesia came very close to the bottom on all the academic indicators, and we're number one on student happiness. Singapore comes right up near the top, and now right towards the bottom, along with South Korea and some others of student happiness. British Columbia happens to be strong in both. We were again in that sweet spot of our kids are pretty happy, and our results are extraordinary. So again, sort of looked at, and Estonia was almost a mirror image of British Columbia, which is weird because I've never really spent much time thinking about Estonia. Very, very similar to us, both in terms of our strategies and where we're at in thinking about learning and students and competencies. And, so some light reading if anybody wants to think about any facts. So a great opportunity to go and hang out with those folks and think big thoughts. And I think we'll have a delegation from Mexico coming up to visit us and look at competency assessment and the self-assessment that's happening on competencies. They are truly fascinated by that. So that's cool.
It's a wow for us. I mean, we haven't had international exposure much in the past, and it's just very awesome.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Thank you.
And the last,
Trustee?
I just think we should be providing the superintendent with some couch and attire.
Couch and swag.
Ball caps are definitely.
Yeah, bulk out.
Some couch and swag. Talk to Liz, see if they have some couch and swag. And the last thing, Madam Chair, and I know I apologize, I'm going on too long, but Bill 28, just want to highlight the positive nature of that. We have lots of discussions right now in our district, and they're happening times 60 across the province, about some of the complications of moving towards solution for Bill 28. Jason hasn't slept in a month and has some more sleepless nights ahead of him as we sort through the details. But come September, we will have way more teachers in our schools. We will have smaller class sizes. We will have especially smaller class sizes in schools that have more vulnerable students, which is excellent. That is nothing but good news. And I think sometimes you just want to make sure that the positive nature of that is front foremost. I make the analogy, it's like when you're moving houses. You can't think about the move ahead of you. You have to think about what it's going to be like when you're living in the new house. And that's sort of what the stage we're in. And this is made so much better by the close working relationship we have with our CBTF executive members. Chris and Erica and Rhonda have just been excellent because every day we find things we haven't thought about yet. What about this? So we go into problem solving mode. And that's been I think that's been comforting to our staff, hopefully to our community and to our parents, that we're not fighting about any of this. We're just putting our heads together and thinking, how do we solve the next problem? What's the next thing we have to figure out to make this work? And this could be so much worse if we didn't have that relationship. And so just kudos to them for that relationship. And Madam Chair, I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, is it time for?
Please.
Okay, so. people that are not communication experts, you can see the confession names at the bottom of this. With a lot of help from others in this office, have a news release that we can send out just to try to get that message out that it's going to be really different. It's going to be exciting. Yes, it's a lot of work, and we really appreciate the amount of work that our staff is doing and people in our schools and so on. But in the end of it all, when it all unfolds, it should be really, really good for our kids. So that's the message we want to get out to our community. If there are people grumbling that, oh, we have to do this or whatever, to make this happen, that's not where the focus should be. The focus should be on when we get there, it's going to be really positive.
And we will be there by September, first day of school. We know that.
Yes. Thank you, staff, for that piece. Okay, moving on to item 9, Mr. Sequist, Secretary.
Thank you. Starting out with some budget items, I just wanted again to remind everybody that the survey is currently active, accessible through the website, and it will close on April 9th. The last time we looked earlier today, there were 79 responses so far, which was good, showing that there is interest in the survey and providing feedback. The other thing I wanted to note was that remind the public that there would be the public meeting on April 18th at 5:30 here at the school board office. So on to the funding announcement. Started with a letter from the Ministry of Education, and we reviewed a little bit of this information before at the last week's Board Education and Business Committee. Just again, here is the basic allocation changes of all the different levels within our funding, and I'll show you what that means on a line-by-line basis a little bit later on in this presentation, but just wanted to provide you with some more information on those, and that translates into our grant, which I know it's hard to see up there, but when we zoom in and we go all the way to the right, thank you, $72,446,927. So when we look at all the different factors of counting the enrollment in September, counting them again in February, not for the regular enrollment, but in February, that's for continuing education and distributed learning, as well as special needs enrollment growth. So if our numbers change and the number of designated students in level 1, 2, and 3 net change, so it's not a new student comes in, if a student leaves, that's a net 0, so it's a net change. There's a second funding count for that. And then there's the May count, which captures the students that are substantial completion in their distributed learning and continuing education programs. So translating that now into the next document that we have here for you is looking at the actual funding announcement to do a comparison to where we ended up the year. So I've got 2017-2018 over on the left-hand side, and in the middle we have 2016-2017. Both are estimated. 2016-17, the year we're in right now, still estimated. We haven't received funding finalized for February or May, although as Superintendent noted, there was a very strong count on the dual credit in February, and we expect some good news from the grant there. So what I'm doing is I'm comparing what the last announcement was based on the September enrollment to the estimated funding that should be coming in. So looking at standard September enrollment, the board is up $891,229, which you find over on the far right-hand column there. And that's mainly a result of change in enrollment. That also reflects the increased costs that are coming to the board for funding of the compensation changes for teachers and support staff next year. Then we see some additional students generated through level 1, 2, and 3 special needs. Well, actually not through level 1, that's status quo, but the change in rate generates another $3,000 there. And And some of those students may already be in the system since last September, and some will be yet to be identified before next September. But certainly, when we look at all the factors there, that generates about another $872,000 through unique student needs over the year that we're in right now. Under salary differential, that is, the board is funded for the difference between the board's cost for teachers, average teacher salary, and the lowest in the province. So in other words, that's a leveler, so that school districts are all funded equally to cover their teacher costs. There's no disincentive to hire a teacher with a master's over hiring a new teacher for a board. There's funding through that line item, and it generates for this district, your costs are on average $1.9 million higher than the lowest in the province, so there's funding for that. Unique geographic factors, this includes student location, distance of schools from board office, distance of the community from Vancouver, heating costs for Cowichan Valley versus the northern districts. There's lots of different unique factors in there, and we have some schools that generate funding because they're small and in communities where they're a certain distance from the next school. So $192,000 increase there in those factors. So in September, the enrollment estimate is up almost $2 million, 1.977 million. We're down a little bit in a couple of the other counts. Because the district is out of funding protection, the dual credit program are counting more students in September, where they would have started students later to capture them in February and May counts, which were out of funding protection previously. Those two were not included in funding protection. It was always between September and September. So some of those students are up in the number up above now because they're going to be counted in September versus in February. And the same again in May. So you've seen some drops there. So that shows that the grant funding is estimated to change by $1.8 million. So that's some information for you. No questions, we'll move on to the next slide. I'll show you how that slides into the reconciliation.
Can you just remind me what the education plan funding is for?
It's for the implementation of the new curriculum, and we weren't sure it would continue on this year. It was, there is still some funding remaining from last year as well that was restricted at last year's year end, so there should be quite a healthy amount there for next year for continuing to in-service teachers and carry that out, deliver that new curriculum. So taking that forward into the reconciliation, what you saw earlier at the Board Education and Business Committee is identified right there in the middle with shortfall presented on March 28, 2017. It's $561,028. We had some questions then that one of them has now been answered, and I'll get to that later. But starting up at the top, there we see the provincial funding estimate providing an additional $1.8 million on the very first line. So that tied into that previous document that I showed you how we changed from this year to next year. Other provincial grant, what that is that's FSA marking. We don't know whether we've received it yet, so it's coming out of the budget for the carryover. Under other, that was adjustments made for the energy manager no longer being on provincial BC Hydro's funding. Rentals we had dropped, anticipating that there may be some changes required under the board's ability to provide daycare spaces, and we're still waiting to actually figure that out, but we're just being conservative to start. And it was balanced using $620,000 of surplus from the previous school year. And we've previously shown you the teacher wage increments of $372,000. With those additional students came additional need for teachers for the enrollment growth. We have wage increases, which were part of that increase in the amount per pupil rate that you saw. Education assistants have been added since last year's budget. There are principals and vice principals who are part of a regional compensation model, and some of them are still on the transition to that first step of that model. And the communications and community engagement specialist position was not part of the last budget. It's a miscellaneous adjustment. So that 561 is familiar to those that were at Board Education and Business Committee. Changes from that and other considerations. We mentioned that on March 28th that we just received some information on the benefit rates for the next year, but hadn't had time to process it yet. I was hopeful that there would be a benefit premium holiday that might offset those additional charges. We've since figured it out. The change for the new extended health and dental premiums program for QP and the United Steelworkers, which was part of the provincial bargaining, that they go to a regional benefit plan, has a cost of about $250,000 for the board. So that is now included in the budget. The other $150,000 was teacher rate increases. So teachers used more benefits in the last year, so the rates are adjusted next year to reflect that. And that's accessing extended health and dental benefits. About $150,000 of that belongs to increase for the teachers. So didn't think it was going to be that high, and it's not good news for the budget, but it's now known, and that eliminates one of the unknowns that we had last time. So still some things to consider are, I can stop and answer the question first.
I just, so when I look at this 979 and change, that's not even touching the surplus we had from the last year's budget that we didn't spend, plus the current surplus we're building right now.
Correct, and I'll show you what that surplus is currently estimated at, just
Just
a
want
little
to
bit.
make sure, because I know
That's correct, there's no surplus brought in to
1.6,
balance the
1.7.
budget.
Yeah.
It's really looking at status quo, and knowing, reflecting what we now know. So we know that those extended health and dental premiums are now real and weren't known, but we're mentioned that we knew we had work to do there, and it's now been done. So the other items we're still considering here are, is there additional teaching staff and contingency? We're currently meeting to look at what's in the budget and how that's meeting the needs as if the world hadn't changed with the Bill 28 and class size and composition language, because the board's out of the operating budget still has to fund classrooms without the class size and composition language. That comes out of a separate fund through a special purpose fund. Looking at staff development funds as well as restoration of some technology. We'll have more, some additional estimates on that next week at the Board Education and Business Committee, and you'll see those in your package on Friday when it comes out. So we're starting to get some better idea what those might be. Continued transition of exempted principals to the regional salary model, should that be approved by TSEC and BCPC, currently not. District level administration, and there may be needs for supports for some of the newly designated students, or simply for the growth within the student supports, need for growth within the services provided through student support services. As you just saw, there was about 50 new students identified in the previous slide with level 1, level 2, and level 3 designations estimated. So we're working to figure out what those may be as well. So that is just basically where the position is at today, and we will have some options in the next Board Education and Business Committee, but wanted to keep you up to date on where we're at. So if there are any more questions, we'll move on to, I believe the next item I have here is a year-end projection. Hopefully it's yeah, thank you for zooming. Great. So column A is the budget that the board adopted in February, and B is where those balances are at as of the date that this projection was prepared. And then we look at projecting the revenues and expenditures. And so I know we walked through this before as to how we do that, but in the case of the revenue side, which is the top section, you can see that column C, Safer International Program, already exceeds the budget. So we know we have that revenue, we're putting it in. We're not having to really estimate that that's going to happen. It's real. Same thing is true on the miscellaneous revenue, which a lot of that comes from the international program as well, through registration fees, which have exceeded what we had in the budget. Transportation is from the international student program. So really most of what you're seeing there is coming out of the international student program, because the provincial grant is pretty well known. What we don't have is the February count, which we think might be, we've heard is going to be pretty impressive from dual credit and as well as DL, distributed learning numbers. Not reflected in here yet because it hasn't been announced. So when it is, it'll be adjusted into the projection. On salaries, what we do is I would look at, say for the principal, vice principal group, here's what the balance is as of March 31st. What was that last payroll? That's going to be the payroll on April 15th, April 30th, May 15th, and it'll adjust that for known differences. Doing the same for teachers, education assistants, clerical, and steelworkers. little more complicated and clerical, and steel workers is sometimes they have 3 pay periods a month. The pay periods don't always fall exactly on the end of the month because they're paid every 2 weeks, so we have to put a period in that we accrue at the end of the year. Do the same through the employee benefits that are associated with those. So one of the budgets that shifted here a little bit is casual replacement, illness and vacation. The last time I showed this to you, it had a larger surplus being generated. We had a very good period after the snow days of low absenteeism, but really the last 2 weeks in the first of February, the first 2 weeks of March shifted quite a bit, particularly with the teachers group. And it is always a bit random from year to year. It's not predictable. If it was, we would know exactly how much to put in the budget every year. It changes with flus and when they arrive and etc. So overall, under salaries, there's a $55 million budget, and we're projecting, because there's $219,000 coming out of the casual budget, $490,000 is being under expended at the end of the year. Less than 1%, so actually pretty close. Same as on employee benefits, $291,000 currently being projected as underspent. Makes sense that if salaries are under, benefits are under. And then on services, we're showing one of the budgets being over, and that's predominantly related to the dual credit program and the tuition funding going out. Utilities, oddly enough, are in the projections are still showing under. I'm not putting it in here yet. I'm still not 100% sure that March was warmer than last March. Still seems kind of cold, and it may catch up to us in some later bills here. But right now is actually appearing to be on track or slightly under. So that's good news because it was a heck of a winter. And then that tells us that under the expenditure side, we're under by about $541,000 on $76 million. So still, as a percentage of budget, pretty close. So that means that on budget, we're anticipating a surplus of $848,000. There's still $994,000 untouched from the previous year, as well as this year's funding, which had increased, that wasn't all brought into the budget to balance in the amended, which puts the board in a projected position of $1.84 million for the end of this fiscal year.
That's good news too.
Yeah, it is good news because
Great news.
there's
It's a long time since he said that.
there's certainly that's certainly something that can be thought of to assist in balancing the previous slide. And we will have some, again, show you a proposal on that.
I think that we did some really hard work over the last couple of years, making the changes that we needed to make to get to this place now. And I just it keeps ringing in my ear what you said the other day about we no longer have to cut and look forward, but we can move forward now. And that's just a really positive place that we haven't been in a long, long time. And it's just really nice that we can continue to move forward. We don't have to stop, check, move back a little bit, and then jump forward again. It's just the first year in a long time. It's something we should celebrate.
Next item is the capital plan response for 2017-2018. It's a 5-year capital plan. It's here because it's been announced, but Lonnie and Monroe will tell us that the Ecole Mount Prevost Elementary and Coheman Elementary projects may be switched for roofing, which is a higher priority for the district. So there's about $515,000 there between those two projects, but currently in discussions with the project agreements have not yet been entered into, and the board may have higher priorities around some roofing that is in much higher need than what has been provided by the ministry on those projects. So that may change. Alex Aiken's building envelope will come through BC Housing. And also good news is that there are 2 small school buses, the shorter buses, that have been approved for replacement and will likely be ordered before the end of this year. As pricing is established provincially for those. So that's some good news.
Well, it's good news.
Count it secondary.
We better use.
Still getting some capital money.
Yes.
The next item I have, at the last board meeting, we talked about the student learning grant, and we'd estimated that it would be around $380,000, and it has in fact been announced at $385,813, and we'll start talking to the principals about this grant tomorrow, about how it could potentially be rolled out and utilized, and DPAC as well, because parents are supposed to be involved in the funding, and it's supposed to help parents. I think was the goal of the ministry when they announced this funding. So, just when we brought it back here to confirm the amount, because now it has been announced, and we were estimating that before. And the next item, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Lonnie Schermerhorn, who is here to talk to you about the 2017-2018 annual facilities grant plan, which is finished under the wire and here this evening. On the bottom, if you haven't found it. Thank you, Lonnie.
So for this year, after much triage, we have arrived at a capital project plan that incorporates 59 capital projects that are on our 5-year project list. I have some highlights. If you can read that tiny print, I hope you can do so, but I'll point out some highlights. The new kitchen over at Alexander Elementary School will be completing our contribution toward that project within the next, I would say, 6 to 7 weeks. When I say our contribution, we felt originally that our contribution was going to be very substantial. Once the community found out about the project, it galvanized everybody into action, and it has grown far beyond everybody's expectations. So our contribution is much less impressive than we initially thought it might have been. But in any case, yeah, we're looking toward completing that this spring. We're also working toward completing all the new windows and cladding on Alexander before some time as well. So we'll have 12 classrooms that have been renovated with new windows and cladding. I know the street side of the building looks much better than it did in the past, but we're carrying on with the rear side of that school as well. Same's happening over at Cowichan Secondary. We have, this is the third of a 3-year program to replace windows and cladding and increase insulation at the secondary school. So we're actually started on that yesterday, our 3rd year, and we should be complete by the end of June. We are working toward phase 2 of a playing field restoration at Crofton Elementary. Relatively minor because it's a fairly new field, but we want to get it up to nice condition, and we're going to embark on a major field renovation at Lake Cowichan Secondary. The community has been looking for us to do something there. We had hoped for more of a financial partnership with the town, but with the condition of the field, we feel that we have to do our part now. Jason mentioned roofing. That's going to factor quite largely in our plan for this coming year. We have a new roofing report, and we'll roll out the details of that. But it's going to take us a while to get through that. We're going to be doing 3 more playground installations this year for elementary schools in the district. We've already identified those 3 schools, and we have a 4th school that is an alternate in case something doesn't happen at one of the original 3. Lastly, as far as highlights are concerned, long-standing request to install sinks in the classrooms along the north side of Paulson Elementary, the playground side. Now that it is a primary school, that's a higher priority, and we're going to try and get that done this year. So our AFG funding for the year is roughly $1.75 million, and that's what this plan reflects. We have another, Jason mentioned, $515,000 worth of school enhancement program funding that will roll into our roofing program, and we're going to make some inroads into our non-structural seismic account this year as well, of about $200,000. So there's about $2.4 million in capital improvement work in the district in the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Trustee Hutchins?
Can you clarify what non-structural seismic count is?
Non-structural seismic is essentially elements within a building that can fall on you in the event of an earthquake. Cement tiles, like fixtures, bridge to tip over, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford.
The district still has surplus in an account that was provided by the Ministry of Education for the purpose of non-structural seismic. So it's a piece of the annual facilities grant that sits outside of this funding here, but has been in our reserves for a few years and is now being accessed.
Lonnie, this seems like a lot of capital development at high dollars. Is that correct, or is this just kind of normal that we're working through?
The annual facilities grant announcement this year is identical to last year, and in fact, it's been the same for several years.
Okay.
There's a small difference in that typically the annual facilities grant number is announced, and then they announce there are certain levies against it. So there's a gross and a net amount, but we had a smaller number of levies against it this year, so it's slightly larger than it normally is. We're going to be looking at a larger number of projects. Many of them are smaller dollar values here, but that's why it might appear to be a lot. Well, it is more.
Here's a lot to me. Yeah. And are we catching up with the state of our buildings?
In some areas we are. In some areas we're making very good progress. All the building envelope work that we've really concentrated on in the last 3 years, not only has it made a big difference in the appearance of our schools, but in the comfort of the students and the staff in the schools. And the byproduct of a lot of these capital projects over the last 3 years is energy savings. They've really focused on energy savings in our capital projects over the last 4 to 5 years. So we're hoping that that's to the benefit of the district as well.
Well, it's an amazing job to go through and inventory and determine your priorities and work with people to do that, because I know you go out and talk to principals and everyone else
Very
who's
big project
around.
list. This is only a
Yes.
tiny fraction
Yeah.
of what we still have to do.
So what I'm trying to say is, well done.
Yeah.
This is amazing work. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sanford,
That concludes my reports.
okay, so let's look at 9 committees and outside organizations. The first being BC with Trustee Hutchins.
I'll be quick. The Board of Education receives the minutes of the February 28, 2017 Board of Education and Business Committee meeting. So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Trustee Thorpe. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to Trustees Thorne and Schmidt for DSAC.
That the Board of Education received the highlights from the March 8th, 2017 DSAC meeting, so moved.
Thank you. And seconded by Trustee Doman. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the alternate BC SCA Provincial Council person, and that would be me. And attached is a letter just saying if we have any late motions, we should get them in. Anybody have anything in their minds about putting a motion on that floor? Just kidding. Good. Moving on. Moving to item D, Trustee Hutchins.
I'd like to move that the Board of Education rounds up rental rates to the nearest dollar for the 2017-2018 school year. And this is the end of a long process.
Yes.
Thank you, Trustee Hutchins. Moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to upcoming meetings and events on page 26. And the list looks a bit longer this time. That is April and a lot of extra meetings and budget. Any comments from anyone? It's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you. Our very expertise lady, Gina. Okay, moving regarding, school districts, what are those? I'm seeing? Those are the attached graduation and district year events. Sorry. Anything on that?
Just, Madam Chair, which is another list that continues to grow as we find out more things, so it's worth continuing to check. We just keep adding things to it as we find out.
Okay. Any comments or questions, trustees? Okay, thank you for doing that. That's an amazing list for all that's happening in our schools. It's wonderful to see that kind of opportunity for kids. Okay, no correspondence, new business, item 12.1, day of mourning, just to announce that the day of mourning is on April 28th, and the intent is to honor all workers who are killed and injured on the job. So, just an acknowledgement, unless there's any comments. Okay. Usually QP is very involved in that, so it's good for them for doing that. Item 15, question period. Anything from? All right, we're into adjournment by trustee Schmidt and trustee Zimmerman. All those in favor, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'll go grab